Hey everybody, so I'm back with another one of these casual impressions kind of videos, because I figured this would be a good way of just, spacing, of not having too large of a time gap between any two videos that I put out, because, I guess I kind of underestimated just how long my previous project would take me, being the Detective Pikachu versus Sonic video. The one I put out before that being my review on the Adventure Time special, that came out in June or July. And then the next one, this one, didn't come out until the end of December. That's 6 months with nothing. And if any of you know how the YouTube algorithm works, that's not so good when you're trying to, grow a channel. If you go too long without uploading something, the chances of a video of yours getting recommended just significantly drops. So that's why I decided that I would start a pattern. So basically, what I'm gonna do going forward is that I'm gonna alternate between, scripted, edited videos and videos that are like this, where it's just me giving some off-the-cuff thoughts on some show, film, or game that recently came out. Anyway, I don't want this to be like the main part of the channel, but I figured this would be a good way of both A, you know, not falling victim to the algorithm, and B, not having to keep, you guys from waiting too long between videos. If you enjoy my stuff, I wouldn't want you to be waiting for so long, because look, I'm in school, I'm in college, I can't really commit to like a consistent schedule of uploading stuff, but I figured that this is the very least I can do so that I'm not literally going radio silent for 6 months while I work on something in my free time. Because my next video is in the works. It's basically a video where I defend the movie Man of Steel, a film that I think just gets a lot a movie that gets way too much hate. And but I figured that in the meantime, while I'm editing that, I will just record this. So I would like to now give my thoughts on the two most prominent movies to come out on streaming services. They both hit on December 25th, being Soul and Wonder Woman 1984. So I'll start by talking about Soul. It's the latest film from Pixar, and if you watched my Pixar ranking video, you'll probably be very curious about what I have to say about this movie and how it holds up compared to other ones. Well, first of all, I think I should before I get into that, I should kind of share just kind of the viewing experience that my brother and I set up for the movie, because you see, the two of us, we used to really love going to the theaters. We loved the cinema experience. We loved getting popcorn and being there for a big movie when there were a bunch of crowds cheering. The food, all that stuff. We loved the whole experience. So obviously, it's been quite some time since we've been able to go to a movie theater. I know that they're technically open now, but it wouldn't be the same because it's very much empty, and you'd have to keep a mask on the whole time, and just you wouldn't really be able to enjoy it, and it's just, quite frankly, just still not safe. Yeah, it still seems unsafe. So what we decided to do is that we would kind of, to the best of our ability, recreate the movie theater experience at our own home. So what we decided to do was we waited till late at night to watch these movies back to back, because we usually we would usually see movies we were excited for very late at night. It was just we just enjoyed the atmosphere of that. So what we did was we tried to simulate the experience by just turning off the lights completely, setting up like a playlist of different trailers for movies that were coming up, up and coming movies. Because when you go to a movie theater, you sit through a bunch of trailers first. So what we do is we pretty much just compiled a list of trailers for upcoming movies we were excited for, like Dune and and Black Widow, and any kind of movie any movie that you would realistically expect to see a trailer for in front of either Wonder Woman or Soul, and we just play them all together on a YouTube playlist. But we also even did was we even just looked up, like, the AMC bumpers, like, the things you see before and after the previews, like, and now the AMC experience, or whatever it is. So that was fun. And we even bought some movie theater candy. I bought myself a box of Buncha Crunch. So that was a lot of fun. The viewing experience was, I mean, it wasn't the same, but it was the best one could do right now. So that was, my brother was very uptight about it. It was like, he wanted everything to be perfect. He wanted no interruptions. He wanted it to be as authentic as possible. And for the most part, it was. I still, you know, eagerly await the day where we can just go to a movie theater, and just enjoy a movie like before. But until then, this is not the worst substitute in the world. Um, I guess I should also mention the short film that we did watch before. This was the short film that was supposed to come before Soul in theaters, but then Soul got pulled from theaters. So Burrow, it's the latest of the Pixar Spark shorts, which is a different line of shorts from the main Pixar shorts. Like the ones like Tin Toy and Bow, and all the other ones that have come out recently. These are apparently like smaller projects worked on by key staff members at Pixar. They're kind of like passion projects, and they're usually uploaded on YouTube. And this one was supposed to get like the theatrical treatment in front of Soul, but instead it just got it got thrown up on Disney Plus before, on the same day as Soul. And so we watched it before, and it was called Burrow. It was just about a bunny trying to find home, and it was cute. It wasn't as emotionally impactful. It wasn't really trying to say anything. It wasn't like it wasn't trying to be super grand artistic. It was just a super duper cute little animated short about a bunny who was too shy to ask for help, but keeps getting herself into trouble trying to dig a home for herself. I will say that the whole network of tunnels underground, and how every animal had like their own full house in this network of tunnels, reminded me a lot of Fantastic Mr. Fox of all things. But yeah, I won't spend too much time on that because it just wasn't a whole lot to say about it other than that it was super cute, and you should definitely watch it if you haven't. But as for the movie itself, I thought it was terrific. I thought it definitely was of the Pixar quality that that one would expect. If you're gonna ask me where I would rank it, in my grand list of Pixar movies, that could always change. But at the moment, I would say that I put it above Inside Out and below Coco. So it's definitely not quite like in their S tier, not quite Toy Story, Incredibles, Monsters Inc. level, Finding Nemo level, but very comfortably in their A tier movies like Inside Out and Up. So, and just to so the thing about Soul is that many say that it's like, as good as it is, it's not really kid friendly. I guess I could kind of see that, but I don't really understand how how a kid would have any harder of a time comprehending Soul than something like Coco, which was literally a movie about death. And the people had no trouble. People seem to have no problem taking their kids to Coco, a movie about where a kid needs to find his dead relatives in a world of dead people. But that's the interesting thing about Soul is that it feels like almost like a perfect mix of Inside Out and Coco, and it makes sense for Inside Out because Pete Docter also directed that movie. Coco was not directed by him, but still, it kind of like combines the idea of your mind with the idea of emotions, and even like the world of even the right before world that we see, the way everything is like kind of fuzzy and almost felt like is very reminiscent of the art style of Inside Out. So basically the movie is about first of all, aside from obviously it's good to address that this is our first major black protagonist in a Pixar movie, but even beyond that, it was cool that this guy Joe Gardner, the main character, he was also like a middle-aged guy. He wasn't like this young kid, because usually the main character of a kid's movie is a kid, or like at least a teenager or young adult. But this guy is like, he's like seems to be well into his 40s. He's just a middle-aged dude. Kind of reminds me of how unusual it was for Up to have a main character who was so old. So that alone gives the movie a unique identity. But by putting aside the diversity points, Joe Gardner is still just a really, great character, and, his story is basically how he learns about the meaning of life in the sense that there isn't really a meaning of life, because that's what I really love about this movie. How, a lot of movies will be like, follow your dreams, find your purpose, find the meaning of life. But, this one is just like, it doesn't really give any concrete answers. It's just more like, you know what, man? There is no meaning of life. The meaning of life is just to enjoy life. Simple as that. I think that, he was kind of so fixated on this idea that, he has to be a musician. That's what he was put in this world to do. And if he doesn't achieve this goal of being a professional musician, then he just has no purpose. He has no mark on the world. because his fear is that he will die without leaving any kind of legacy. He feels that he'll just be forgotten. But in reality, you know, it's not really a healthy. It's one thing to have goals and have aspirations, but if that goal becomes an obsession, something that you're so fixated on that it's all you focus on, then once you achieve that goal, like, then what? That's kind of what he realizes, that there's a point in the movie where he actually does achieve that goal of performing with his favorite musician, and then he's like, well, now what? And she's like, well, we do it all again tomorrow. And he realizes that that basically shaping your whole life and convincing yourself that your whole existence is built around one purpose just isn't really a good way to live. You're not going to enjoy yourself. It's okay to have goals and aspirations, but it's also important to kind of live life in the moment, because there are things that will just kind of pass you by that you won't even recognize, because they'll just be so fixated on this one thing that may or may not even live up to your expectations. So I don't think the movie is necessarily saying, oh, it's stupid to have dreams. Just go with the flow, man. Just don't do whatever you want, man. What's the meaning of anything? Like, it's not a nihilistic movie. It's not a hippie movie, but it's just saying, like, chill out a little. That's basically the message. The movie is telling you to chill out and just be like, look, it's good to have goals, but you also want to actually be sure that you're enjoying things that are in front of you. And that kind of brings me to the other character, 22. So she's basically, she's like a soul who has somehow given up on life before even living it. And basically Joe is his goal is pretty much to he wants to help 22 get her Earth Pass, which she would give to him in order for him to return to his body. And that's another thing, it does take quite a bit of suspension of disbelief to believe that Joe was the first person to ever, reject death. That he was the first person to ever be like, no, I don't want to die, and then jump off the escalator and get lost in the great before. Like, every other soul he sees is just standing there like, okay, this is it. Like, especially someone who's super young. Like, but that's just movie logic for you, that we have to assume that out of the billions upon billions upon billions of people who have died since the beginning of the human race, Joe Gardner is the first one to ever go against the system. And that's why that Terry is freaking out about it. And so the thing about 22 is that, Tina Fey is, she's great. She does a great job voicing her. There's a very funny joke where he's like, why do you sound like a middle-aged white lady? Which, why would she? She hasn't been born yet, but apparently she can sound however she wants to sound, but the way she sounds is to annoy people. But basically, her whole thing is that, she goes from trying to help Joel, get his Earth Pass, to realizing that she actually does in fact want to live life. That Joe kind of acts as her spark, as they call it, a spark, something that is not, the spark is not about, it's not your reason to live. Your spark is not your purpose. Your spark is not like what you're put on the road for. It's simply the thing that gets you excited to live. You can't live life until you want to. And that's kind of how it goes. So, Joe had the idea that jazz was his spark, but it turns out that that's not really what a spark is, and that he whether he intended to or not, he turned out to be 22's spark. His kind of, he teaches her about the world around her, and that in turn just, he acts as her spark. He's the one to finally get through to her and make her want to give this whole life thing a chance. So the one thing I will say about this movie is that, the trailers definitely do a good job of really hiding what this movie is about, because, you watch the trailer and you think, oh, okay, so he dies, he quote unquote dies at the very beginning, then he gets transported to the soul world, the great before, and the whole movie is about him, spending his time in the soul world, trying to get 22 to learn the meaning of life, so he's finally going to get back to his body. But that's not it at all. It's not like Coco, where, like, he starts out in the real world, he goes to the world of the dead. There's a lot of jumping back and forth between the real world and the soul world as the movie goes on, because just, maybe like a little under halfway into the movie, they're back in the real world, and it becomes a body swap movie. That was, I remember that cat showing up in some promotional material, but never once did I think, oh yeah, that cat's gonna be Joel in a cat's body. But yeah, as it turns out, we spend the middle act of the movie basically, with Joe in a cat's body and 22 in Joe's body. It's like it's definitely a little unsettling to see Tina Fey's voice come out of a middle-aged African American man's body. But and apparently it's explained away by saying that everyone hears Joe's voice anyway. But and I was worried, like, oh god, is this just gonna be Freaky Friday? And no, I mean, there are some jokes, like, I kind of roll my eyes at 22 having to learn to walk, and like she accidentally rips Joe's pants. But they mostly kind of just stay away from that. It's mostly just like, just an excuse for them to both be in the real world together. I don't know. Maybe it would have been better if Joe was just in his own body and then 22 went into the cat's body. But then again, that wouldn't have been enough of a conflict there. And this does allow for one of the best moments, well, two of the best moments in the movie, because the best parts of the movie are definitely in the real world, and that's something else I should say. I've said it. I'm a broken record when it comes to this, but when Pixar wants to, capture the aesthetic, the spirit of a culture or a place in the world, whether it be France and Ratatouille, or Mexico and Coco, or really just anywhere, they nail it. And I really have if I of all people could say this, because New York City, I feel a great attachment to New York City. I was born there. I don't live there now, but I live one state away, and I pretty much visit there all the time because it's where 90% of my family lives. New York City is, for all intents and purposes, my second home. So the way the overall atmosphere of the city was captured just felt very, very authentic to me. And the two scenes I was talking about, like the barbershop scene, was great because it was the first glimpse of 22 finally beginning to just kind of understand what living life is all about. Because Joe basically, he says how, I only ever talked about music with this guy, and this guy, he was happy to talk to, but he was like, you never really asked me about my life. And as it turns out, 22, while getting a haircut, in Joe's body, does that. And it kind of, it's funny how they kind of teach each other. Like, Joe teaches 22 that life is worth living, and 22 teaches Joe that there's no one single purpose of life. It's just kind of about just doing what makes you happy. And the other really good scene is when Joe talks to his mother. Well, he talks to his mother through 22. He he kind of feeds 22 the lines, and just it's the kind of scene Pixar could write in their sleep, because they know how to do feels. They know how to get you in the feels. They know how to just how to take your heart and just wring it out like a sponge. And that's what this scene did. Him just kind of finally sharing his true feelings with his mother, and where his mother was coming from, because she just wanted to see him not waste his life, because she was worried that he wouldn't be able to support himself with his musician dream. I read this article about how basically this article kind of bashed the movie about how 22 was a quote unquote white savior. Which, first of all, I mean, how is she a white savior when she's not even a person? She's a blue savior. But even then, no, she's not a white savior. The idea that 22 saved Joe, like, no, I mean, they taught each other things. But Joe, I think, saved 22. He showed her that life is worth living. So I don't agree at all that this was a white savior story, because they just kind of helped each other grow. It was a mentor and mentee kind of story, because Joe, he posed as 22's mentor just as a means of of staying undercover in the Great Before world, but then he ends up becoming her mentor for real. And he finds a way of teaching her how to live life. And the ending is the one part that some people have some issues with. I'm happy that the ending wasn't just Joe just decides to let 22 have his body and just let her take over his life, because that would be absolutely stupid and terrible, and everyone just to expect nobody to notice the difference in the real world. So, but what ends up happening is that they return to the Great Before. 22 has her Earth pass, because during her time on Earth, she has realized that she does in fact want to have a life on Earth. She wants to experience the world. And Joe, decides to let her do that, and he decides to let her keep her Earth pass, and and just kind of accept the fact that he's gonna that his life is over. And then the movie, he gets onto the escalator up to the great beyond, and then at the last second, it's like, what? And one of the Jerrys is like, wait a second, actually, you could change, you can have a second chance after all. And I could almost imagine that the movie was supposed to just end with the shot of him just staring up at the great beyond on the escalator thing, but then Disney's like, whoa, hold on, guys, Pixar, this is still a kids movie. we can't, we let you get away with a lot, but we can't let you get away with the main character basically choosing to kill himself. So then they wrote in this scene that was like, oh, actually, Joe, here you go, you can have a second chance. And while we're talking about the Jerrys, the Jerrys, well, I mean, there are a few of them. The main one is kind of like there's Jerry, there's Terry. Terry is just really funny. She's like I don't know if it's a he or she. Also, they are very super, super obsessed with the Count, and just and the animation on them is just so great. I think it might be 2D, but even if it's not, it's just such a great style. It's like Picasso paintings come to life. And then the other Jerry is just kind of like this kindergarten teacher. She kind of gives off the demeanor of a kindergarten teacher. She's like, quiet coyote. That I just find that to be very funny. How they're just so completely nonchalant about this guy basically breaking the soul world protocols. Like, oh, okay, you're lost, we'll bring you back. I mean, it is interesting that the movie kind of argues that that you don't acquire your traits from like your experiences. They're kind of baked into your personality as before you're even born. That's the one thing I think the movie I didn't quite love with the messaging, that she's like, okay, these people will be introverts, these people will be troublemakers, these people will be creative types, and like it just seems a little arbitrary that it would be like that. But aside from that, I just thought that that the Jerrys, they were just very amusing. The movie doesn't have a lot of characters, but the Jerrys definitely, they weren't just comic relief, because they weren't, super in your face, obnoxious comic relief characters like you'd see in maybe some of the older Disney movies. They have a very quaint, dry style of humor to them. But anyway, the ending with Joe deciding to live after all. I mean, at first glance you could be like, oh, that's so cheap, he should have died. But like, on the other hand, when you really think about it, was that really the right way to end the movie? Like, with him just accepting that, like, okay, I'm 40 something, I'm just going to accept the fact that I'm going to die. That it'd be one thing if it was like an old person trying to, like, the idea that he was supposed to just kind of accept death, before his life even truly began. Like, because his whole thing was that he's supposed to learn how to live life to the fullest, and the fact that if, that he would just die before even getting the chance to do that, it would just seem like kind of a waste. So at the end of the day, I think that him not dying was the right call. I don't think I have nothing against movies going darker, but I just think that thematically it didn't make sense for him to be like, okay, I accept that my life is over, because he only just now really realized how to live his life. So it wouldn't feel right if he were to end his life before it truly began. So yeah, to wrap up the portion about Soul, I thought it was excellent. I definitely think it is in the upper tier of Pixar movies. Not perfect. Some of the body swap humor kind of had me rolling my eyes, but the movie in general was still quite funny. And it just has a very, very unique message about just the meaning of life. And maybe kids wouldn't be able to understand it, but they might still like it just for the cute cat and the fuzzy visuals of the great before world. But I thought it was great, and it truly is a shame that it couldn't come out in theaters. If it ever gets some kind of like special theatrical run later in the year, when it's actually when you're actually able to go to a theater without gambling with your life, then I might just see it then. But in the meantime, check it out on Disney Plus, because it's another Pixar classic. What can I say? So the other movie that came out on the exact same day is Wonder Woman 1984, and this one did technically get a theatrical release, but again, it just I could have gone to see it, but it wouldn't have been the same, and it honestly just did not feel safe. It's incredible that after all these months, something as simple as going to the movie theater still feels so reckless. But that's the world we live in now. So my brother and I opted to stay at home and watch it on HBO Max, which it will be on for I think, is it for 30 days or 20 days? I'm not sure, but it's definitely still on there now. So Wonder Woman 1984, the latest DCEU movie. So it just, it was, I mean, talk about a tonal whiplash when it comes to, like, the first Wonder Woman film was, it took place in during a very bleak time period, during World War I, the early 1910s, a lot, it was a very, dour time, people were dying. It was telling kind of a thoughtful story about the horrors of war and just kind of human nature in general, because Wonder Woman, Diana, she was just kind of naive. She thought that, I gotta kill Ares to end the war, but she kind of learned that, well, yes, Ares was sort of behind it. he was just kind of like, influencing humans' decisions, but he wasn't quite controlling it. He wasn't a puppet master. It wasn't like an on-off switch where, okay, I kill Ares, the war is over. But he had to kind of learn that, that the human race, we can definitely suck sometimes. Us humans can suck, but we aren't beyond redemption. And it's just kind of learning. It's kind of the message is just kind of being a hero. And I mean, it's something about how it's not about whether or not they deserve your help. It's whether or not it's whether or not you're willing to help them. Wonder Woman 1984 is just, it is pure camp from start to finish. Pure, bubblegum, bright colors, comic book camp. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Movies, people, I love Superman and Superman 2 from the 70s and 80s. Those movies are campy as all get out, but they're fun to watch because they're just bright and colorful and they're optimistic. I mean, this movie, it's a period piece on the 80s. It has all the 80s tropes you could expect, the synth music, the ridiculous clothing. Thankfully, it didn't really, there are lots of movies that take place in the 80s. Thankfully, this movie didn't feel the need to kind of shove in a pop culture reference, bring up, Donkey Kong or Back to the Future every 2 seconds. More than anything, it captured the spirit of the 80s in a more broad way, kind of like, like a figure like the villain Maxwell Lord, which I will get to in a second. But, basically, if you're going into Wonder Woman 1984 expecting another, kind of deep, thoughtful story, you're not getting that, because the only messages in this movie is, hey kids, it's not okay to cheat, and be careful what you wish for, because it kind of starts off the movie opens with a flashback where Diana is like competing in the Amazon Olympics or whatever it is, and she's about to win, but she cheated by taking a shortcut. So, cheating is bad, kids. We can't cheat, because when you cheat, you're not really a winner, huh? Because when you cheat, you're not really getting anything out of it. Kind of cheesy. And then it's also, be careful what you wish for, kids. If it's like a monkey's paw, you wish for one thing, but it doesn't turn out the way you want it to be. Because, I mean, it didn't really, the trailers didn't give this away either, but, this movie is basically the key MacGuffin of this movie is a wishing stone, which is like the MacGuffin to end all MacGuffins. Like it's like like you thought the Phantom Ruby and Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces was the king of MacGuffins. This thing is just like like just make a wish and anything can happen. But so I think it drives the whole plot. It's explained away by saying, it was given to humanity by the god of lies, which okay. But anyway, if you're expecting a deep story, that's not what this is. But this movie is still tons of fun. If you don't think too hard into the plot, because things kind of it's lots of fun. The action is it's top notch. It's not quite as CGI heavy. The final battle, Wonder Woman, it was kind of cool, but it also kind of looked like a PS3 boss battle. If I'm being honest, especially there's something about the DCEU CGI that just doesn't look quite up to snuff. Like, I mean, I'll get to this in the Man of Steel video, but like Man of Steel, like by far and away has like the best CGI out of any DCEU movie. Like, the only real use of CGI is towards the end with Cheetah, and like I think that I could definitely tell. I mean, I could definitely think that that they were intentionally trying to kind of keep the lighting very dim during the Cheetah battle, because especially because I think people were a little shaken by the nightmare fuel that was the Cats movie, and if I don't think anyone really needed to see we didn't really need any more furry fuel than we needed by having close-ups on Cheetah's cleavage and whatever, and bright lighting. So, I could definitely understand that. And when it comes to Cheetah, she wasn't the main villain; she was the secondary villain. So, I mean, Kristen Wiig was definitely a very interesting choice, because when you think villain, when you think big bad villain, you definitely don't think Kristen Wiig, because she's just known for very light comedy kind of stuff. It's good for an actor to expand their horizons, but it's definitely not a casting I would expect. But it definitely works. I mean, it's kind of the similar trope where where the villain starts out as kind of like this meek person, then they become kind of corrupted by some kind of force, like they're mistreated, but then once they kind of gain some kind of power, we saw this in Batman Returns with Catwoman, where she's kind of walked all over by everyone, and then the moment that she has her Catwoman transformation, she becomes super confident and feminine and whatever. And we kind of see that here, where Diana befriends Barbara, and she's just she's very smart, but she's and good natured, but she's walked all over by everybody. She's treated like crap by her boss, and she's kind of made fun of by her coworkers, doesn't get a lot of respect. And then comes the wishing stone, and she kind of innocently wishes to be more like her friend Diana, more confident, more sexy, whatever. And and that's what it seems to be working out well for at first. But then, it turns out, this wishing stone is actually a monkey's paw, and you lose something for everything you wish for. And it turns out what she lost was, her humanity, her goodness. And you kind of, it's a very slow development over time. And like I was on board with it. I was kind of buying her character up until the very moment where she goes full furry. It's like I didn't really see the connection there. She's like, oh, I want to be an apex predator, but like, okay, because like I mean, throughout the movie, like she's like an archaeologist. She studies ancient artifacts, but like I never got the sense that she was like super, into animals or cheetahs. I mean, the only real connection to cheetahs in the movie that she has is the fact that she wears a bunch of cheetah clothing. Um, and I mean, but it's like I don't really understand how turning her into a literal cheetah, like, you know, fulfills her wish of being like the best of the best. Like it seemed just kind of a forced way of getting her into her final form, because I don't know, I don't know. It was strange, but again, this is a movie where you just kind of have to go with the flow, because if you stop to question everything, then it falls apart completely. Like the fact that, Steve Trevor, he comes back to life, sort of, through Diana's wish, but he doesn't just come back to life. He comes back to life by inhabiting the body of some random dude who, and like, I mean, so basically, Diana sees him as Steve, but the rest of the world sees him as this guy, and he's just inhabiting his body, and it's like, okay, but doesn't this guy have, like, a family and friends or people who know him? And, like, if like Diana was, she was struggling with the idea of giving up her wish, because that was ultimately the only way to get her powers back, because her monkey's paw thing was that she gets Steve back, but she loses her powers. But like, it never really brought up, like, if she decided to, oh, okay, fine, I'll sacrifice my powers to keep Steve forever, like, you're basically killing someone, because the guy whose body Steve is inhabiting, he had a life of his own, and just that's a little messed up when you think about it, especially especially when you think about the fact that they did stuff together in bed upon being reunited. It's like, it's a little weird. People say, oh, that's not a fully consensual thing when you think about, like, it's just like, and Diana meets, she comes across the guy at the end of the movie, the guy when he's restored to his old self, when she gives up her wish. And it's like, yeah, you spent like a couple of days in someone else's body with a woman you have never met before. That's a little sketchy. But of course, the main villain is Maxwell Lord, who, like, I mean, like, I don't care what Pedro Pascal said, denying it. The guy is Donald Trump. The villain is, in every sense of the word, a spoof of Donald Trump. He is like a big, television personality who seems to be like the super successful rich business guy, but secretly he's in debt and he's a con man, and he's looking for an easy way out, and he wants more and more and more, and he keeps trying to dig himself out of his hole, but things only get worse, and also he's a terrible father. I can write a list of, like, 20 different things that directly, connect him to Donald Trump, but I won't get into that now. And basically, his deal was that he thought that he started up this oil company, but turns out that he couldn't find any oil, so his solution is to track down the wishing stone and wish to become the wishing stone. So that way he himself is the wishing stone, which means that he can grant other people's wishes. So he gets others to do what he wants by saying, like, don't you wish blank, don't you wish so and so would happen. And like, but then he realizes that his monkey's paw thing is that every time he uses his wishing ability, his body is deteriorating. So his plan is to, like, connect go on air and connect every electronic on the planet, and get everyone to make a wish, and since he's the wishing stone, he takes things in return. So his idea is like, oh, I'm gonna get everyone to make the wishes, and in return, I get everybody's health and strength and whatever. And like, okay, so, and the movie, and the climax is like, Wonder Woman, she gets her lasso of truth on him, and then, like, somehow the lasso of truth powers her, somehow are, get into the TV signal, so that she connects she shares the truth with everybody, and that gets everyone to announce their wishes, and like, and you kind of expected to believe that that like 7.2 billion people decided, okay, I guess she's right. It's not okay to take shortcuts in life. Cheating is bad, and sometimes you should be careful what you wish for. I'll renounce my wish, and everyone renounces their wish, and then Maxwell Lord renounces his wish, and he has a super sappy reunion with his son who had been neglecting. I guess that's the one thing to differentiate him from Trump, that he actually learned his lesson and thought to be a decent father. it's like, and by the climax, like everything has just gone, completely apeshit, like just the world is kind of in complete chaos because of Maxwell Lord's wishing shenanigans. And like, I mean, I think that that Sean Chandler kind of touched on this, how it's a little weird that that basically now we know that, like, I know that the whole direction of the DCEU has changed since the days of Man of Steel and BVS. How we want to tell more standalone stories. We want to tell we want to give the directors more creative freedom and them to kind of be just creative projects for each of these directors, like Patty Jenkins and James Wan. And like, I get that, that's fine, but like, it's still in the same continuity. Like, you haven't. These movies are still taking place. You can change the structure of the individual movies and change the tone of them, but like this is still supposed to be like the same shared universe. And I don't think that the whole like, oh, we're going in a different direction thing is like a valid excuse to just completely retcon certain things, because like basically, and I'll bring this up in Man of Steel, in the Man of Steel video, the whole thing in Man of Steel was like, oh, Superman's got to wait until he's really fully mastered his abilities, because the world hasn't seen anything like Superman before. The world doesn't know such supernatural forces exist. And yet here in the year 1984, many decades before the events of Man of Steel, we see that the world nearly imploded on itself because of a magical wishing stone. It's like okay, if the world could handle a magical wish granting stone, why can't they handle Superman? But you know what? Again, this is like, I liked the movie because it was fun and campy, and it had like Chris Pine. He's great. All the actors are great in it. It was definitely going off the Mandalorian. It was definitely weird to see Pedro Pascal in the villain role, but still the movie had pretty good humor. It was fun, solid action, but like it is not. It definitely is. It's not a deep movie. It's pure kind of visual junk food, or pure cinematic junk food, basically. And that's okay sometimes. Sometimes a superhero movie like The Dark Knight can be something more than just a superhero movie, but sometimes it can just be campy fun. And I can definitely understand the disappointment going from the more thoughtful story of Wonder Woman, the original, to this, which is just ridiculous, insane, campy, suspension of disbelief stuff. But at the end of the day, that didn't really matter to me. We'll get other movies like that. We've got Zack Snyder's Justice League coming up, which is going to be certainly a passion project, and not not in any way shallow, whether it's good or not. I think it'll be good. But yeah. So to sum it up, Soul was a masterpiece. Wonder Woman 1984 was pretty good, but not amazing. And I think you should check them both out. And I will be back with my next video where I pretty much give a video essay on Man of Steel. But until then, I will see you next time. I still don't have any kind of catchy sign off, so I will see you next time.